You're fired. The impact of federal job cuts.
Tune in to Bus Up.
Talk, where the trends ignite. Dive deep in the convo, let your thoughts take flight. Engage with the moment, join the vibrant spree. Your go-to for insights, come and chat with me.
Welcome to Podcast Talk. I'm your host, Mr. LG, where we dive deep into trending topics that matter. If you're new to this channel, don't forget to smash that subscribe button and give me a thumbs up. A salute to my returning subscribers as we march toward our goal of 100 subscribers. If you're feeling generous, consider sending a donation to my Chime account. You can follow me on X at Talk2Podcast. That's Talk, the number 2, Podcast. Let's get started. Before we bring on our special guest to discuss the significant job cuts affecting thousands of federal employees, let's touch on some other headlines making waves. First up, President Donald Trump has been vocal about his views on tech entrepreneur Elon Musk, asking his constituents for feedback. The question I pose to you is, how do you feel about Elon Musk? His influence spans from electric cars to space travel, yet his statements and actions spark controversy regularly. In finances, the money game. In another political move, Trump has revoked Chevron's permission to operate in Venezuela. This decision further strains an already fragile economy under Nicolas Maduro. Trump is holding the Venezuelan government accountable for its promises to take back deported citizens, to shift back to a more aggressive stance on diplomatic relations. It's interesting to see how these developments may play out in the context of U.S.-Venezuelan relations. Now on to our main topic of discussion. Now we're facing hard truths as the Trump administration presses ahead with drastic downsizing measures across various government agencies, resulting in thousands of federal workers losing their jobs. We need to examine not just the implications of these cuts, but also the human costs associated with them. Agencies like the Department of Education, ED, U.S. Agency for International Development, USAID, Department of Defense, DoD, National Institute of Health, NIH, Department of Homeland Security, DHS, and the Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, have all been impacted. This broad array of departments highlights the sweeping nature of these layoffs. Consider the ramifications. Many of these individuals dedicated years, if not decades, to public service, and now they are left with uncertainty about their future. Data suggests that the job market may not fully absorb such a sudden influx of experienced personnel, especially in their specialized fields. Many of these professionals may find it challenging to secure employment within the same sector again. To unpack this complex issue, I'm privileged to welcome our special guest. And I want to thank my special guest, Ms. Shay, for joining me for this episode, You're Fired, the Impact of Federal Job Cuts. And the first thing I want to ask you, Ms. Shay, Elon Musk, who heads the DOGE program, what do you think of his involvement in politics?
Well, the government contracting with private companies to go in and do audits is not a foreign thing. It's completely acceptable to have an outside party. However, the fact that he was not vetted is what worries me. We don't know his affiliations. We don't know what he's using the money that he's being awarded. We don't even know where the money is coming from that he's being awarded for his contributions to the United States government. So it's not a foreign thing, but it is worrisome in that we really don't know this guy. Only through media clips and sound bites, and people are far more complicated and involved in other things. And I just think the American public needs to know, where is his true allegiance, to which country, to what projects is he doing. Those are the kind of things that the American public should know all about.
Okay. So recently, the program that he's heading, DOGE, cut service programs, which caused government workers to lose their positions and probably struggle to find the same line of work. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that it is grotesquely unfair. I think it's terribly, terribly unfair. Coupled with the fact that the reasoning that he laid people off is because what came out is that he gave them such bad reviews, and several of those fired employees are actually rebuking his reviews, and that they were not underperforming or poor performing. They were, according to their last reviews, they did an exceptional job and deserve to keep their jobs. But it is unfortunate that so many people are losing their jobs who truly are instrumental to the operations of our country by keeping it clean, keeping it efficient, keeping it honest. And firing those people, I think, was a terrible, terrible mistake, especially since that so many of them were fired. That's a pretty big number for a pretty big country. With a pretty big budget.
Yes, indeed. They spoke about possibly a stimulus check derived from a 20% dividends from, the money they found through the DOGE program and all the things they've been cutting. What's your thoughts on a possible stimulus check?
Well, federal employees pay themselves first through their tax revenue, and that is how the government generates money, through tax revenue. So that is going to be a huge cut to the tax revenue of this country. So I do wonder, from where will that money come? The stimulus money comes from tax revenue, and by cutting people who stimulate the economy through their work efforts, and also coupled with the very large tax cuts that the wealthy will be awarded, it just makes me wonder, where is the money coming from? Where are you moving money from to fund these stimulus checks? So that's concerning to me. It's not like the government can just arbitrarily print more money. We really don't know where we're coming from. We definitely came from a recession. I don't know if we're going to go back to that. I don't know if we're going to go back to too much inflation. It's just too much questions on, by cutting these workers, where will the money come from? I don't think a $5,000 stimulus check per American citizen is even feasible, but everything just remains to be seen.
There you go. Okay. What about folks losing their jobs after voting for Trump?
I can imagine how duped. I can imagine how misinformed that they feel, angry. It's so funny with all these protests going on. I would be surprised to know the exact numbers of just how many of those protesters actually did vote for Trump, thinking he was going, not knowing what he was planning to do, although he was very verbal on his campaign on what he was planning to do. But I just can't imagine that that's what they anticipated. I'm sure they are some angry, very duped people right now.
I can feel their pain. During this government overhaul, they have fired 20,000 workers, frozen foreign aid, disrupted construction projects and scientific research, and they plan to lay off a lot more people. Your thoughts?
Well, what strikes me, of course, are the scientific research. I work in the health sciences, so I wonder how much that will affect people who were so hoping for cures, or at least better treatments for their disease processes. You cannot just stop a science research. It cannot just be interrupted. So having to go back and start all over will cost much more money than if they would just be able to continue. So that part affects me personally, being that I work in the health sciences. But as far as the construction that was going on, as far as everything else the government had going on that's just interrupted, I think that's going to cause a deleterious effect on its completion. I think it's going to cause a massive effect on the individual American citizens' bottom line. You know, it's already a struggle out here to survive. Everything is already so, the prices are just so exorbitant. And I just think cutting these jobs, decreasing the tax revenue, I think that it just was a terrible mistake for the completion of anything that was already going in a very positive direction.
Okay, and I went in the store recently, and I personally don't eat eggs, but I just happened to notice the price of them. I was like, man, that's just totally outrageous. And then all of a sudden I see it made major news. And do you think other things will go up like that? But what do you think about those eggs just shooting skyrocket?
It's awful. Now, in fairness to the current administration, the egg prices were higher for reasons that I'm not sure if it could really be pointed to Trump, because swine flu is a real thing, and other bird flus and things like that these chickens are having. I'm not an egg eater myself, but people don't realize just how much vaccinations require eggs. A lot of vaccinations are truly egg-based. That's why if you notice when you go and get a vaccination, they will ask you, are you allergic to eggs? So I kind of pause when I put the egg prices particularly on Trump's watch. I have to pause it. I'm no Trump supporter, let's be clear. But I do pause to say that's really his fault. Now, as far as the other groceries, again, this is a capitalist society, and capitalists can charge what they charge. I don't even know if the government really can affect that. I mean, price gouging is one thing, but capitalism is another. But I think because he is so staunch capitalism, and because of the impending inflation or recession that we're going to face, I think it's just going to get worse. And he is, by cutting these jobs, cutting the scientists, cutting taxes, I just think it's going to be worse. It's just absolutely awful and without cause.
Okay, one question I was going to ask you was about inflation, but you pretty much answered that. But I do want to ask you, do you believe when Trump and Elon say America will go bankrupt if action is not taken now?
So, the American budget has several parts. What's going to go bankrupt? I mean, the entire country, impossible. Like, highly, highly improbable that we will teeter on the fact that America becomes a bankrupt or third world country. I do think that there will be several industries that will not be attainable. I mean, even taking a vacation is going to be a problem. Bankruptcy, that's such a broad spectrum, but that's what they do. They attack our fears, but through information and reading both sides. If you're a Trump supporter, great. Could you please tune in to who's not Trump supporters to hear the other side? And if you are a Trump supporter, can you please listen to Fox or whatever to hear their side? Because we have to be well informed. But blanket statements like we're just about to be this bankrupt country, that's just highly, highly improbable. But yes, I do think that we're going to be a country that is very compromised, particularly if our debt increases. If the debt ceiling, that's the big argument. I think we just need to pay attention to exactly all the little pots that our budget is. For example, at last count, I think in 2023, or was it 24? The overall budget was $26 trillion. But that $26 trillion is divided into so many different pots. So it's highly improbable that the country per se will be bankrupt. But there will be some industries and some budgets that will be highly affected that will probably either go away or non-functioning or just poor management and operations and things of that sort. But I try to get away from saying, oh, America itself is going to be bankrupt. I doubt seriously, because that would mean if a country were bankrupt, then that's looking at what third world countries are. Stay away from those generalizations. Find what your passion is. For example, mine is the health science, and see what's going on with the health sciences, and then you'll see how efficient those separate little budgets are going. Yeah.
All right.
Don't play into the fears. Don't play into the fears.
All right. You're listening to Podcast Talk. My special guest, Shay. I want to thank you for joining me today. Until next time, we appreciate you.
Oh, I appreciate you. Thank you so much for having me. It's quite an honor.
Thank you, Ms. Shay, for your insights. It's an ongoing challenge, one that will require attention from policymakers and public alike. As we conclude today's episode, the phrase, "you're fired," takes on a much greater meaning than theatrical dismissal. It evokes the reality of lost livelihoods, the diminishing quality of public service, and the urgent need for responsive governmental action. For our listeners, I want to know your thoughts. How do you think we should address the fallout from these cuts? Thank you for tuning in to Podcast Talk. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your comments below. Until next time, stay informed and engaged.